So Arknights has been everywhere recently with global gearing up for Near Light, a very anticipated event that everybody's hoping to be able to jump on and bless you with the luck. Hopefully they're able to get it, as well as CN announcing their 3rd anniversary, going through all that information, all the different events, free 6 stars, all that kind of stuff. But one thing that caught a lot of people's attention was the Arknights collaboration with Capcom and kind of the speculation predictions of what kind of Capcom games they could be bringing. What could it be? So today we're going to be talking about the predictions on my side. Of course, all speculation. We have no inside information or anything, but I wanted to talk about a list from least to most. It's very, very short. Honestly, there's only a certain amount of games that I really feel like could fit in this one. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So starting off with the least likely, it's going to be Street Fighter. Now, the reason I even present Street Fighter is because there's been a lot of collaborations with Street Fighter and mobile games and just regular games and stuff like that, that Capcom has been pushing this game into a lot of different categories. Of course, a lot of you guys know, if you follow Capcom a lot, it is basically like their bread and butter. They love the hell out of Street Fighter and they try to put it wherever they can. And even though it doesn't technically make sense lore wise and some of the characters might not fit into Arknights, there's a couple ways that I think it could actually end up working, which we'll talk about here in a second. But I wanted to talk about why I think the main kind of draw to them doing that is. And if you guys don't follow Street Fighter and you don't know anything about news updates, they're actually gearing up for their 6th game, Street Fighter 6. Now, that's supposed to be slated in the late 2022, early 2023. They have not made an official announcement on the release date, but I can think that maybe they'd be kind of gearing up for doing a collaboration with a couple different games. And then in anticipation of that collaboration, they go ahead and they announce the release date to get more hype behind it. So it could be kind of a marketing stunt for Capcom. And I could definitely see a couple of ways and a couple of characters that could fit in Arknights, because obviously Street Fighter is kind of limited in some of the ways that they do their lore. But I could definitely see Ken or Ryu being like kind of a striker, brawler type of character, maybe like Flint doing a little bit of pushback, or maybe even having a couple different skins. I don't necessarily think that Ken and Ryu will both fit because they're basically cut from the same cloth. They have a lot of similar movesets in the actual Street Fighter game. So I don't think Arknights is going to be willing to add both of them because it'd be kind of like a copy and paste. And from what I've seen, Arknights doesn't tend to like to do that when it comes to collaborations or events in general. They try to be a little bit different. However, there's not too much to pull from when it comes to Street Fighter as far as like versatility, because it is a fighting game. So most of them are going to be kind of like fighters, brawlers with very little like range or archetypes and classes and stuff like that that they can pull from. But if it is just like straight up a marketing stunt and stuff like that, I could definitely see Ken or Ryu add into the game and being more like a flank character, or maybe Mountain or something like that is like kind of this big brawler. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one, and that is going to be Devil May Cry. So I feel like there's so many different ways that Devil May Cry's universe and lore and stories could definitely make their way into an event for Arknights. Some of the different enemies and stuff like that could definitely be some fun stages to jump into an event like with Arknights and stuff like that. Talking about Virgil as well as Dante, if they wanted to go a little newer, they can go with Nero on the DMC 4 and 5. Now this one's a little harder because they haven't really announced anything in the Devil May Cry franchise. So this would just mainly be like we know you guys really like the franchise. This one will work really well with Arknights. So it'd be more of a fan service than anything, unless they have something up their sleeves for DMC and they're hoping to kind of promote that. But this one would be mainly like a fan service. Like they just know that so many people really enjoy the collaboration, which, you know, hey, they could definitely do that. There's so many different ways. Like I said, I could see Dante being, because there are different ways to kind of kit Dante. You can have him as like kind of a close range, maybe something closer to like Midnight, where he has like kind of that guard status, but he has a longer range. Or maybe he can even be like, I want to say sniper, but kind of a close range sniper, maybe something that utilizes his dual pistols. Virgil, on the other hand, would definitely probably be more like close kind of combat, since he does mainly use his sword in some different variations. I don't know if they'll go into like the demonic stuff and like the different transformations that DMC has, but I definitely could see that happening. Or with Nero having kind of like that push-pull effect, depending on how you kit his gauntlet, would also be kind of a cool thing. So there's a couple of things that I could think of that Devil May Cry would be very good at. Now, the likelihood of it would just be fan service, which, hey, I'm all for fan service. But if it came from like a pure marketing standpoint, I don't necessarily think that it'd be the best game, but it is one that I think is pretty high on the list. Now, talking about an honorable mention, the only reason I wanted to bring this one up is because people on YouTube and the comments have actually kind of persuaded me to think how this one would make sense. Because whenever I was presented with the fact that Monster Hunter would be one of the games that would be in the collaboration, I instantly thought, okay, well, it's a totally different world, right? Monsters, open world, running around with your friends, not really a main character because it's you. I mean, they can make variations on the different weapon types and stuff like that and kind of have a little bit of fun of it there. But there's not too many like main characters that they can pull from if they wanted to add a character to the collaboration. But a lot of people are talking about skins, and I think there's a couple of different characters in Arknights that would fit skins, you know, have maybe like a cool lance or some of the different spears and stuff like that that Monster Hunter actually has to offer, and they can go that route. But the reason I don't necessarily think that is going to happen is that seems like more of like a follow-up collaboration, where it's like they have like a mini collaboration where they just want to add a couple skins from a popular franchise, and they're not looking to do like a ton of stuff. I don't really see how a lot of the enemies would work in Monster Hunter unless they just had like smaller versions of some of the monsters, and then maybe like the big baddie would be like one of the huge monsters that you fight at the end. I could definitely kind of see that working, but it would be kind of a weird structure, mainly because the whole premise of Monster Hunter is to do it with your buddies, to be having like this huge open world and having your own character and stuff like that. So it'd be kind of hard to pull unless they did skins based on some of the different weapons, which they could definitely do. There's a lot of weapons to kind of pull from, but that was kind of an interesting point just from the fact that they talked about skins. So I thought it'd be an honorable mention. So of course, finally, we're going to be talking about number one, the number one pick. And I'm sure all you guys have already commented this before you even got to this point. It's going to be Ace Attorney. Now, it can't be anything else, right? There are so many different similarities, so many different parallels between Ace Attorney and Arknights. It's insane. If they didn't go with Ace Attorney, I would be baffled. I'd be bewildered because it just makes so much sense. They're practically the same game. They're practically in the same world. You know, Phoenix Wright, I mean, for all we know, man, he could be the Doctor. I mean, we haven't seen the Doctor's face. It's probably just Phoenix Wright. You think about it, and it's like Arknights, you know, they're all lawyers. They all wear tuxedos, you know, suits, and they're all in pursuit of justice, just like everybody in Ace Attorney, right? I mean, there's so many different similarities that it's just crazy that it wouldn't be that. I only made the list just to kind of hype up Ace Attorney because honestly, that's all it could be, right? Okay, now that my dumb jokes are over, let's talk about the real number one. So the number one is not necessarily one that I want 100%, but I could definitely see why it would work, and that's going to be Resident Evil. I know a lot of people have speculated this one, and honestly, if I had to be like kind of like push away my own ambitions and hopes and dreams and cry a little bit on the inside, it's probably going to be Resident Evil, just because there's a lot of different similarities in the worlds. You know, the infected and Resident Evil are a little different. They're not necessarily like mentally stable when they're infected and stuff like that. We have seen iterations of characters that are mentally stable in Resident Evil, so I could definitely see it working, but it's not the same type of infected that Arknights has. Most of the characters in Arknights are mentally stable, even though they're deemed infected, whereas in Resident Evil they're kind of mindless zombie. I don't really like calling them zombies because they're more like infected with like a parasite and stuff like that, depending on what variation of Resident Evil that they decide to go with. But I could definitely see some of the characters working. Of course, there's like Chris, there's Leon, all the different characters that I feel like are very compatible with Arknights, seeing as how they've already done stuff with Rainbow Six, and the fact that they have characters that have like, you know, the machine guns and they're warriors and soldiers. And it definitely makes sense that they could do a similar, very similar thing with the way Resident Evil set up with, you know, some of the different characters maybe being like snipers or maybe like short shotgun burst characters. There's a couple of different routes that they could definitely go, and there's a lot of cool enemies depending on what iteration of Resident Evil they decide to go with. There's a couple of enemies like Nemesis, for example. I could definitely see him being like, you know, this towering 9-foot dude, super hard to kill, does a massive amount of damage, wipes out your guards, wipes out your defenders. There's a lot of things that I could see happening. Plus the enemies that would be like kind of the mobs, like the smaller enemies, could definitely be fitting for like a stage and stuff like that, because Resident Evil has a lot of variations to some of the different infected and stuff like that they could put in, and then have Nemesis as like the main baddie, and then you just have to like get your crap slapped in because Nemesis is such a huge force in Resident Evil, depending on which one they go with. So that'd be a really like the top of the top. The reason that I don't necessarily want this one is mainly because I'm partial to Devil May Cry. I've seen Resident Evil a lot. I feel like there's a lot of collaborations. I know a lot of people don't think about it, but Resident Evil has been kind of around in a lot of different areas, and I feel like Devil May Cry has not been able to shine outside of its own real universe a lot of different times. So I definitely like to see it, but like I said, I could see why Resident Evil would definitely work in some of the different storylines, and honestly, I feel like that's going to be the one 100%. But I wanted to make the list anyway. I wanted to talk about predictions because there could be a wild card. It could be Ace Attorney. We never really know. They could go far out with it. There's a lot of different Capcom games, but that's going to be my top kind of recommendations. Like I said, tons of Capcom games that they can pull from. I just don't necessarily think a lot of them fit for the fact that they're a little older and don't really make a lot of marketing sense for Capcom, and it would really truly be fan service, a little bit like the way the Devil May Cry is. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. Have a good rest of your night, guys. Peace.